The grand marble foyer of the Kingston mansion echoed with silence, the kind of silence that spoke louder than sound. It was 7 a.m., and billionaire real estate tycoon Ethan Kingston, one of America's most influential men, stood by the massive glass window, clutching a cold cup of coffee. His mind wasn't on his empire today. Not the mergers, not the headlines, not even the Forbes cover calling him the Iron Heart of Wall Street. It was his son, Noah, 6 years old. Hadn't spoken since his mother's passing 8 months ago. Not a single word. Not even a whisper. His tiny world had fallen apart, and Ethan, despite all his wealth, couldn't fix it. Therapists came and went. Teachers tried and failed. Nothing reached the little boy locked in silence until she walked through the mansion door. When Maya Brooks arrived, a 27-year-old black woman with soft eyes, a warm smile, and the gentlest voice Ethan had ever heard, something shifted. Noah, who hadn't smiled in months, hid behind the couch that first morning, peeking out curiously at the new nanny. She didn't rush him. She didn't talk to him like a project. She simply said, "You don't have to say anything. I'll be your friend anyway." Ethan had expected another employee, but the moment he saw her kneel beside his son, humming softly, holding out a wooden toy car with patient hands, he felt something he hadn't felt in years, a spark, a warmth, a heartbeat. Neither Ethan nor his son could explain it. But from that morning on, both their lives began to change, in ways no fortune could ever buy. The first week felt like watching sunlight pour through a house that had forgotten warmth existed. Every morning, Maya arrived at exactly 7:30, wearing the same soft yellow cardigan, a symbol of her quiet optimism. Her hair was always tied up in loose curls that framed her gentle face, and her smile, calm, patient, and utterly sincere, carried more peace than all the therapists Ethan had hired since his wife's passing. The mansion had always been immaculate but cold, polished marble floors, silver vases, and expensive silence. But when Maya walked in, something changed. Her laughter didn't just echo through the hallways. It stayed there, lingering like a song that refused to end. Noah, Ethan's 6-year-old son, was a mystery no one could solve. The boy who once sang songs at breakfast had turned into a shell of himself after losing his mother. He wouldn't speak. He wouldn't look people in the eyes. He simply existed, quiet and distant, as though life had dimmed its light around him. Maya never tried to force him to talk. She simply met him where he was. She'd sit cross-legged on the rug in the playroom, spreading out colorful Legos. "You think we can build this tower taller than your dad's office?" she teased softly, her tone light as air. Noah would peek up from behind the couch, cautious, curious. He didn't reply, of course, but the corner of his lip twitched, and his small hand reached for a Lego piece. Ethan, watching from the doorway, felt something stir inside him, something he hadn't felt in months. He told himself he was just observing her methods, assessing her professionalism. But deep down he knew that wasn't true. He was simply moved. Her patience wasn't performative. It was natural. When she laughed, she didn't laugh at Noah. She laughed with the silence, inviting it to break at its own pace. That afternoon, as soft rain tapped against the window panes, Maya took a worn copy of The Little Prince from her bag. She began reading aloud, her voice lilting like a melody that soothed both child and father alike. "It's only with the heart that one can see rightly," she read slowly, her tone filled with feeling. "What is essential is invisible to the eye." Noah, sitting a few feet away, looked up, his eyes uncertain, his little fingers clutching a toy car. There was a flicker of emotion there, something fragile and sacred. Ethan, standing by the doorway, froze. That was the first time in months he'd seen recognition on his son's face. When she finished reading, she didn't ask questions. She simply closed the book and said quietly, "That's one of my favorite lines. Sometimes we just have to feel with our hearts instead of our eyes, huh?" Noah blinked at her, and for the first time didn't turn away. Later that evening, after she'd tucked Noah in, Ethan found himself lingering near the playroom door. Maya was softly folding his son's blanket, humming a tune, one of those gentle lullabies mothers hum without even realizing it. "Miss Brooks," he said quietly. She turned, startled. "Oh, Mr. Kingston, I didn't hear you there." He hesitated, unsure why his voice suddenly felt unsteady. "He's different when you're around." He smiles. He listens. Her expression softened. Children don't always need words, sir. Sometimes they just need to feel that the world is safe again. Safe, Ethan repeated quietly. I've spent millions trying to make sure he has everything, but I never thought about that. Maya smiled gently. Money can't buy peace, Mr. Kingston, but love can build it. Something about the way she said that struck him like thunder. There was no judgment in her tone, no pity, just truth. He wanted to ask her more, about where she learned to speak with such wisdom, about the quiet sadness in her eyes, but she turned back to pick up one of Noah's crayon drawings. She smoothed the paper tenderly, like it was made of glass. Every child draws what they feel, she said softly. Even silence has color. Ethan didn't know what to say. He simply nodded, throat tight, and turned to leave. But as he walked down the hallway toward his bedroom, something made him stop. From Noah's room came a sound he hadn't heard in nearly a year. Soft, bubbling laughter. It was faint but real. Ethan leaned against the wall, tears burning behind his eyes. His son, his sweet broken boy, was laughing. And all because of one woman who treated him not like a burden to fix, but a heart to nurture. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He replayed the sound of her laughter in his mind, the way her eyes glimmered when she looked at his son, the calm certainty in her voice. He didn't understand it yet, but deep inside, he knew something irreversible had begun. The woman in the yellow cardigan had done what no amount of therapy, money, or prestige could do. She had brought sunshine into a house built from shadow, and for the first time in years, Ethan Kingston found himself wondering, not about business, not about loss, but about hope. The morning after Noah's first laughter, the Kingston mansion seemed lighter, as though the walls themselves had exhaled. The staff moved quietly, smiling more than usual. But one whisper passed between them like a secret carried on air. "The nanny," murmured the chef to Ethan's assistant. "She takes the bus here, 2 hours each way, in the dark." Ethan overheard it as he passed the kitchen doorway. He stopped, the words striking him harder than expected. 2 hours? From where? He stood at the window for a long time, staring at the drive where her small figure usually appeared just after sunrise, walking with steady steps and a calm presence that didn't fit the chaos of his life. For some reason, he couldn't focus on anything else that day. Not the pending merger, not the conference calls, not even the board's complaints. His mind was consumed with questions. That evening, as mist rolled across the estate and the sky turned the color of bruised lavender, he waited near the gate. His car idled quietly behind him, headlights low. When he saw her walking toward the bus stop, clutching her worn tote and umbrella, he stepped forward. "Maya," he called softly. She turned, surprised. Her cardigan was damp from the drizzle, her eyes tired but kind. "Mr. Kingston?" He took a hesitant step closer. "You don't have to take the bus every day. Let me have the driver take you home." "No, thank you, sir," she said quickly, her tone polite but final. He frowned. "It's not a favor. You work for me. It's the least I can do." "That's exactly why," she replied, lifting her chin gently. "You already pay me. I don't want to owe anyone anything more." Her voice wasn't defensive, it was grounded, calm. Ethan was quiet for a moment, his breath visible in the cool air. "Most people would accept the help," he murmured. She hesitated before answering. "Most people haven't spent their whole life proving they deserve what they already worked for." The words lingered like thunder before rain. Ethan didn't press her further. He only nodded slowly, watching her walk away into the mist, her yellow cardigan fading into the city lights. That night, he sat by the window of his study, nursing a glass of scotch. The rain had grown heavier, and with every drop against the glass, he thought about her, the way she carried herself with quiet dignity, how she never complained, never sought pity, and how she somehow radiated peace despite carrying storms of her own. He wondered what her life outside the mansion looked like. A small apartment, family, struggles. Whatever it was, she hid it well, not behind pride, but behind purpose. Hours later, thunder rolled across the sky. Ethan was just about to retire for the night when he heard a cry, faint but sharp enough to slice through the hum of the storm. "Noah." He ran up the stairs 2 at a time, heart pounding. The door to his son's room was already open. Lightning flashed, and in that moment he saw a scene that froze him in place. Noah was sitting upright, drenched in sweat and tears, trembling. Maya was already beside him, holding his small hands in hers, whispering gently, her voice a soft lullaby. "It's okay, baby. You're safe. So I've got you." Noah clung to her shirt, sobbing into her chest. "Don't go, Mummy," he cried between gasps. Ethan's heart shattered. He wanted to step in, to hold his son, to tell him it was all right, but his feet wouldn't move. Something sacred was unfolding before him, something too pure to interrupt. Maya's eyes glistened with tears, but she didn't correct him. She didn't tell him she wasn't his mother. She simply held him tighter, rocking gently as though the world might fall apart if she let go. Minutes passed. The boy's sobs quieted. His breathing steadied. When Ethan finally entered, the storm outside had softened to rain. Maya looked up at him, her face streaked with tears. "I'm sorry," she whispered shakily. "He needed her. And I couldn't stop him." Ethan stepped closer, his voice barely audible. "Don't apologize. You gave him what even I couldn't." She blinked fast, struggling to contain the emotion rising in her chest. He looked so scared. And I remembered what it's like to wake up and think the person you love most is gone forever. The confession hit him hard. It wasn't just empathy, it was experience. There were ghosts behind those words. He wanted to ask what she meant, what pain she was carrying, but she gently stroked Noah's hair instead. "He's asleep," she said softly. "He's safe now." Ethan nodded, his throat tight. "Thank you, Maya." When she turned to leave, he stopped her at the doorway. "You shouldn't have to face your own pain just to heal ours." She met his gaze, eyes shimmering under the faint hallway light. "Sometimes," she said softly, "that's the only way healing works. One broken heart helping another remember how to beat again." He didn't sleep that night. Neither did she, because from that moment on, both knew something unspoken had formed between them. Something neither of them planned, yet neither could deny. It wasn't romance. Not yet. It was deeper than that, an invisible thread of understanding between two people who had both lost too much, but still found the strength to give love anyway. The storm passed by dawn, but its echo, the sight of her cradling his son, the sound of her whispering "you're safe," stayed with Ethan Kingston long after the rain stopped. He'd built empires from steel and glass, but for the first time, he realized the strongest thing in his house wasn't the walls he owned, it was the heart he didn't. The days that followed the storm unfolded like a quiet miracle. The Kingston mansion, once an echoing palace of grief, now hummed with small precious sounds, the clinking of crayons in a tin box, the distant rhythm of Maya's laughter, the faint pitter-patter of Noah's steps as he began exploring again. Ethan found himself lingering more and more near the playroom doorway, pretending to read emails while really just listening. He wasn't used to this version of his home. The warmth, the movement, the feeling that life was returning. And at the center of it all was Maya, steady as sunrise, guiding his son, and unknowingly him too, toward healing. One golden morning, sunlight poured through the kitchen windows. The scent of pancakes filled the air. Maya was humming softly as she wiped a drop of syrup off Noah's cheek. "I've got sticky superpowers now," she teased with a grin. Noah smiled but said nothing. Just tapped the table twice in response, his little code for laughter. Ethan entered, still in his robe, holding a cup of coffee. "You're turning him into a pancake connoisseur," Maya chuckled. "Better pancakes than silence, right?" Ethan's smile faltered, but not from pain and from gratitude. "Yeah, better than silence." Later that day, Maya reached into her bag and pulled out a small wooden music box. Its paint was faded, the corners chipped from time. She set it gently on the table beside Noah. "What's that?" Ethan asked, curious. "My grandmother's," she said softly. "She used to say music can teach even a quiet heart to sing." She wound the key. The box began to play, and a gentle, nostalgic tune, "You Are My Sunshine." Noah froze. His wide eyes locked on the box, then on Maya. Slowly he leaned closer, pressing his ear against it. The melody danced between them, filling the room with something fragile and beautiful. Ethan stood still by the counter, barely breathing, afraid to interrupt the spell. Then, after a few moments, it happened. Again. The word was so faint it could have been mistaken for the sigh of the wind. Maya blinked, her hands trembling. She knelt beside him. "What did you say, sweetheart?" Noah's lips quivered, eyes shimmering like the surface of a pond. "Again," he whispered. The music stopped. The world seemed to stop with it. Ethan's coffee cup slipped from his hands, shattering on the marble floor. He didn't even hear it. His vision blurred with tears as he rushed forward, kneeling beside his son. "Noah, you spoke." The boy turned to him, confusion flickering in his eyes, then recognition. "Daddy!" He swallowed hard, his tiny voice trembling. Music. The sound of that word, Daddy, broke something inside Ethan. All the months of grief, frustration, helplessness, and guilt came pouring out in a single tearful breath. He pulled Noah into his arms, holding him tightly as though afraid he'd vanish again. "Yes, son," Ethan choked out, his voice cracking. "Music, it's beautiful, isn't it?" Noah nodded, his small hand clutching his father's shirt. Maya stood a few feet away, her hand covering her mouth, trembling with emotion. Tears streamed silently down her face. "He spoke," she whispered. "He really spoke." Ethan turned toward her, his voice unsteady but filled with awe. "You did this, Maya. You brought him back." She shook her head, wiping her eyes. "No, sir. Love did." For a long moment, none of them spoke. The music box began again, softly, the same tune repeating like a heartbeat. Ethan looked at her then, really looked. The woman standing before him wasn't just an employee. She was light, patient, humble, strong. The kind of person who didn't heal with medicine or money, but with kindness so deep it disarmed the darkest pain. Later that evening, as the mansion glowed under soft lamplight, Ethan tucked Noah into bed. The boy held the music box close to his chest. "Maya coming tomorrow?" Noah asked quietly. It was the most words he had spoken in nearly a year. Ethan smiled, brushing his hair back. "Yes, she'll be here, buddy." "Good," Noah murmured, yawning. "She makes the house happy." Ethan's eyes burned again. He bent down and kissed his forehead. "She does," he whispered. "She really does." When he stepped out of the room, Maya was in the hallway organizing books into a neat little pile. "He's asleep?" she asked softly. "He is," Ethan replied, leaning against the wall. "He said your name." Her eyes widened. "He did?" "He said you make the house happy." Maya's breath caught in her throat. For a moment she couldn't speak. Finally she whispered, "Then I guess I've done my job." But Ethan shook his head slowly, his gaze steady and full of meaning. "You've done more than your job, Maya. You've given him and me something I thought was gone forever." She looked down shyly, trying to hide the emotion swelling in her chest. "You gave it too, Mr. Kingston. You let me in." That night, long after everyone had gone to bed, Ethan sat alone in his study, unable to work. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her, her hands trembling when Noah spoke, her smile soft as the tune from the music box. He didn't know what this feeling was, not fully, not yet. But he knew that something deep within him had shifted, and as the faint echo of "You are my sunshine" drifted through the hallways of his once empty home, Ethan Kingston, the man who thought he'd lost, everything realized something profound. He hadn't just found a way to heal his son. He had found the sound of hope again. Everything was perfect, until the world found out. It began with a photo, one innocent picture. Maya laughing as little Noah tugged on her curls in the garden, Ethan standing behind them with a rare, genuine smile. The sunlight caught his face just right, softening the man the media once called the Ice King. By morning, that same photo was splashed across every gossip magazine in New York. "Billionaire falls for his nanny," screamed the headlines. From rags to riches, the black nanny who melted the Ice King's heart. Social media erupted. Some defended her. Most didn't. Strangers who knew nothing of her began dissecting her life, her background, her education, her accent, even her skin color. Every whisper of prejudice that society could offer came clawing back like vultures. When Maya arrived at the mansion that morning, the flashing cameras nearly blinded her. "Miss Brooks, are you sleeping with your boss? Did you plan this from the start? Are you using his son to get close to him?" Each question stabbed deeper. She didn't answer a single one, only held her head high and walked inside. But her hands trembled the entire way. Inside, Ethan stood by the window, jaw tight. The phone had been ringing non-stop. PR managers, board members, even his estranged mother calling to warn him. When he turned to her, his voice was low but heavy with concern. "Maya, I'll fix this. I swear to you, I'll make this stop." But Maya shook her head, her heart breaking at the sight of his strained face. You can't fix what people want to believe, Ethan. They'll twist this into something ugly, something it's not. He clenched his fists. Let them talk. I don't care what they say about me. She stepped closer, her eyes glistening. But I do, because they won't just talk about you, they'll talk about me, about Noah. They'll say I came here with a plan, that I wanted your money. And the worst part? She paused, choking back a sob. They'll say your son can't be safe around me. Ethan's expression shattered. No, don't say that. Maya sighed deeply, her shoulders trembling. You're fighting for custody, Ethan. If this scandal gets any bigger, your ex's lawyers will use it. They'll say you're reckless, so that you put your child around someone unfit. Her voice cracked on the word unfit, because it was everything she had spent her life fighting against. Ethan's face went pale. He looked toward the staircase where faint laughter echoed, Noah playing in the distance. Blissfully unaware of the chaos beyond those walls, he whispered, barely audible, You knew. I read the papers, she said softly. They've been waiting for a reason to destroy you. Silence hung heavy between them. Then she did what she knew she had to, the thing that tore her soul in half. She packed her small leather bag quietly. The sound of the zipper closing felt like the world ending. Ethan stood by helplessly, his mind spinning for something, anything to say that would stop her. Maya, he murmured, stepping forward, please, don't leave us. She turned, her eyes shining with tears that refused to fall. If I stay, they'll ruin you both. But if I go, you'll be safe. I don't want safe, he said, his voice breaking. I want you. That was the moment she broke, just for a second. Her heart screamed to stay. To run upstairs, scoop Noah into her arms and promise him she'd never leave. But she couldn't. Love, the kind that was pure, meant sacrifice. She reached out and touched Ethan's face gently, memorizing every line, every scar, every softness that few had ever seen. You and Noah. You're the family I never had, she whispered. But maybe loving you means knowing when to walk away. The front door creaked open. The cool air rushed in like a cruel reminder. She looked back once, just once, her heart tearing itself apart. Tell him I'm proud of him, she said quietly. For saying his first word. What word? Ethan asked, choking on his own tears. Mama, she whispered. The door closed softly behind her, and for the first time since his wife's death, Ethan Cole, the man who built empires, who never bowed to anyone, sank to his knees on the marble floor and wept without restraint. Outside, the cameras flashed. Inside, a little boy called for the woman who'd given him his voice. But the house, and once filled with laughter, answered only with silence. 2 months later, the mansion that once echoed with laughter had turned into a hollow cathedral of silence. Noah had stopped giggling. His little footsteps no longer danced across the marble floors, and his crayons, the ones Maya used to scatter across the living room, now sat untouched in a dusty box. Ethan buried himself in board meetings, late-night calls and meaningless deals. He told himself he was fine, that the pain would fade, but every night, as he walked past the nursery, he heard her voice in the walls, that soft hum she used to sing to Noah before bed. He would pause, hand resting against the doorframe, and whisper to the emptiness, "Good night." Maya. Winter arrived in full force and cold, unforgiving, and white as the emptiness that had swallowed their home. Snow piled up on the driveway, and the trees stood bare like old memories stripped of color. It was on one of those nights, when the snow fell quietly and the fire burned low, that the doorbell rang. Ethan wasn't expecting anyone. Noah was asleep upstairs, clutching his stuffed bear, the one Maya had stitched back together after it tore. Ethan hesitated, frowning, before walking toward the door. When he opened it, the world seemed to stop. There she was. Maya, her curls glistened with snowflakes, her cheeks flushed pink from the cold. In her trembling hands, she held a small cardboard box, old-worn and marked with a child's crayon drawings. He forgot these, she said softly. Her voice cracked on the words. Ethan stared, speechless. The air between them felt electric, alive, like the storm had brought her back with purpose. Before he could speak, a small voice came from behind him. Maya? Noah stood at the top of the stairs in his little dinosaur pajamas, rubbing his eyes. The second he saw her, his face lit up, pure joy bursting through weeks of sadness. He bolted down the stairs and threw himself into her arms. "You came back," he cried, clutching her neck. "I missed you every day." Maya held him tight, tears spilling freely now. "I missed you too, baby. More than you'll ever know." Ethan's throat tightened. He watched them, his son's laughter returning. Her arms wrapped around him like home. And for the first time in months, the mansion didn't feel empty. When Noah finally drifted off to sleep on the couch, clutching Maya's hand, Ethan found himself standing by the fireplace, unable to hold it in anymore. "Why did you come back?" he asked quietly, his voice rough with emotion. Maya looked up at him, her eyes shimmering in the firelight. "Because," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "I realized something. Love doesn't disappear when it's scared. It doesn't run away. It stays, even when it hurts." Ethan took a step closer, his jaw trembling. "You shouldn't have had to go through that alone. The media, the lies, I should have protected you." "You tried," she said softly. "But I needed to protect you too. I thought leaving was the only way to keep you both safe. But I was wrong." He closed the space between them, his eyes searching hers. "I don't care what the world says anymore. I don't care about headlines or shareholders or anyone's judgment. I just want you here." Maya blinked, her tears glistening like liquid silver. "Are you sure?" she whispered. "Because being with me still means fighting them. It means explaining why a billionaire fell in love with his black nanny." Ethan's lips curved into a small, trembling smile. Then let them choke on the explanation. A laugh escaped her, the first real one in months, soft and trembling but filled with hope. Ethan reached out and cupped her face, his thumb brushing away a tear. "Maya Brooks," he murmured, "you brought light into this house, into my son's heart and mine. You're not just part of our lives, you are our lives." She leaned into his touch, her eyes closing. "And you two are my home." Noah stirred awake on the couch, blinking sleepily. He saw them standing close, smiling through tears. "Daddy," he mumbled, "we're happy now?" Ethan turned to him, his voice breaking but full of joy. "Yes, son, we're happy now." The fire crackled. Snow fell outside in gentle silence. For the first time in years, peace returned to the Cole mansion. Not the cold, polished piece of wealth, but the warm, fragile, beautiful piece of love that had survived everything trying to destroy it. That night, as Maya tucked Noah into bed, he whispered drowsily, "You came back? Just like you promised." She smiled softly, brushing his curls. "I'll never leave again, sweetheart." Downstairs, Ethan stood by the window watching the snow fall, and for once the world outside didn't feel cruel. It felt new, it felt forgiving, because sometimes love doesn't come wrapped in perfection. It comes with scars, storms, and second chances, and still chooses to stay. And that was the night the billionaire, his son, and the black nanny became a family. Spring bloomed across the Kingston estate like a promise fulfilled. The air was sweet with the scent of jasmine, and the wind carried laughter, soft, pure, and alive again. For months, the mansion that once stood cold and echoing was now warm with joy. Noah ran barefoot across the garden, chasing a butterfly that danced lazily between tulips. His laughter rang out, clear and bright, echoing through the vast green yard. Maya watched from the porch steps, her sundress swaying in the breeze, her heart swelling with a quiet peace she'd almost forgotten existed. Ethan sat beside her, his sleeves rolled up, a rare ease in his posture. The hard lines of his face had softened over the months, replaced by something gentler, fuller. Happiness suited him. Love had given him back his humanity. Maya leaned her head on his shoulder and whispered, "Do you ever regret it?" Ethan turned, brushing a strand of her hair from her face. "Regret what?" "Falling for the woman who gave my son his voice back." She smiled, a small laugh escaping her lips. "People still talk, you know, about us." Ethan chuckled, his voice rich and calm. "Let them talk. The world can whisper. We'll just keep living." Her gaze softened as she looked toward Noah, now kneeling by the pond, fascinated by his reflection. There was something about that little boy, once so fragile, so quiet, now radiant, curious, unafraid. And every time he smiled, Maya saw pieces of Ethan in him, not the cold billionaire the world saw, but the man who had learned to love again. Inside, the afternoon sun poured through the wide windows. On the refrigerator door hung a dozen of Noah's drawings, messy and colorful. One stood out, 3 stick figures holding hands, A tall man, a woman in a yellow dress, and a small boy between them, smiling wide. Above them, written in uneven, shaky crayon letters, were two simple words, "My family." Maya stood frozen, staring at it. Her hand trembled as she traced the letters lightly, her throat tightening. "He drew this?" she asked softly. Ethan came up behind her, his hand resting on the small of her back. "He did," he said quietly. "He said it's his favorite picture." Her eyes filled with tears she didn't bother hiding. "When I first came here, I thought I was just helping a little boy," she whispered. Ethan smiled, his voice breaking with tenderness. "You didn't just help him, Maya. You helped us both learn to live again." She turned toward him, her heart so full it almost hurt. "Do you ever wonder," she murmured, "how one act of kindness can change everything?" He nodded, eyes locked on hers. "Every day. You came into our lives when we needed light the most. And you stayed, even when it hurt." The weight of everything they had survived hung in the air. The scandal, the judgment, the nights filled with loneliness and longing. Yet here they were, still standing, stronger, softer, together. Outside, Noah's laughter floated in again, and Ethan smiled faintly. "He used to cry for hours," he said quietly. "He wouldn't sleep, wouldn't talk. Then one day you walked in, and it was like he finally felt safe." Maya blinked away a tear, smiling through it. "I think he saved me too." The sun dipped lower, casting golden light across their faces. Ethan reached for her hand and intertwined his fingers with hers. Not with the desperation of a man clinging to hope, but with the quiet certainty of someone who had found it. "You were right that day," he whispered. "What's essential is invisible to the eye." Maya's lips curved into a trembling smile. "But not to the heart," she replied softly. The wind carried the scent of blooming roses through the open doors, wrapping around them like a blessing. Noah ran inside moments later, holding a small yellow dandelion in his hand. "For you, Maya," he exclaimed proudly. She knelt down, smiling through her tears, and took it gently. "It's beautiful, sweetheart." "You have to make a wish," Noah insisted. "Daddy says if you blow it, your heart gets what it wants," Ethan chuckled. "That's true, buddy. Go on, Maya, make one." She closed her eyes for a moment. In her heart, she didn't need to wish for anything more. She already had everything she'd ever prayed for. Love that saw her, a child's laughter, and a home built not from wealth, but from healing. Still, she whispered, smiling softly, "I wish." This never ends. When she blew the dandelion seeds into the golden air, they floated up, tiny pieces of light, drifting toward the fading sun. Ethan wrapped an arm around her as Noah giggled, chasing the seeds across the lawn. "It won't," Ethan murmured. "Not as long as we keep choosing it." And there, as the evening settled over their home, the three of them stood hand in hand. No titles, no secrets, no walls left between them. Just love. Pure, unshaken, and real. That night, the mansion glowed not with chandeliers or wealth, but with laughter, forgiveness, and the sound of a family that had found its way through every storm, because sometimes the greatest fortunes aren't counted in dollars. They're counted in hearts that refuse to stop believing. And so, the billionaire, his son, and the black nanny, against all odds, became what they were always meant to be, a family made of love,